Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Model Kit Review. In today's fun review video, we'll be taking a look at the Italeri AMT Douglas P-70 Night Fighter. Both of these kits share the same plastic parts. They are based on the AMT P-70 that was released in 1997. The main difference between the Italeri kit and the AMT kit is going to be in the decals, and we'll go over that in a little bit. I have previously built AMT's A20 Havoc kit. That kit shares most parts with this one. I'll include some pictures of that aircraft to illustrate things that I'm talking about in this review. In this review, I'll give a brief history of the P-70. We'll be going through the kit instructions, and I will be highlighting any problem areas to watch out for. There are a few problem areas to watch out for on this kit. I'll be covering those, and you really want to stay tuned for that. We'll also be talking about the fit of the major parts. We'll talk about the surface detailing on the kit. We'll look at the detail on the smaller parts like the engines and the landing gear and the interior of the kit. We'll take a look at the decals for both the Italeri kit and the AMT kit. We'll look at the clear parts and we'll talk about the fit and clarity of those. I'll also include some historical photographs, and we'll talk about some modifications that will need to be made to this kit if you are really going for the highest level of accuracy possible. During World War II, the radar sets and the equipment needed in a night fighter was too heavy to mount in most single-engine fighter aircraft, so a lot of your early night fighters were based on existing medium bomber designs. And the P-70 is no exception. It was based on the Douglas A-20 medium bomber. In the P-70, the bombardier position was replaced with a radar set. Armament on the P-70 consisted of two 50 caliber machine guns in the nose on either side. It also had a pod mounted underneath the belly of the aircraft that housed four 20mm cannons. The P-70 was primarily used in the Pacific theater of World War II. Looking at the instructions, Step 1 covers the assembly of the cockpit interior. Based on what will be seen through the canopy on the finished kit, I would add some seat belts for the pilot seat, but other than that, I think what comes in the kit is certainly adequate for what you can see. In Step 2, we're assembling the rear gunner station, and we're also adding the wing spar and cockpit to the fuselage, and then closing the fuselage halves around that. Prior to closing up the fuselage, I would highly suggest mounting the nose sections, and those are parts 79 and 80, to their respective fuselage halves first. That way it allows you to work at that seam from the inside and from the outside. You just don't want to forget the suggested 1 gram of nose weight to keep it from tail sitting. In Step 3, we are building the wings and attaching those to the fuselage. We're also attaching the canopy sections and the air intakes on the top of the wings. On this kit, the air intakes are a little bit fiddly, and I would highly suggest gluing them in place prior to attaching them to the lower wing section. That way you can work the seam from both the outside and the inside of the wing. Setting the parts together, I noticed that on the one lower wing, I do have a little bit of warping, and it kind of warps in a downward position. I'll probably run that under some hot water and see if I can get that sufficiently straightened before I glue the wings together. I was able to get a very good wing to fuselage fit on the A-20 kit. Step 4 covers the assembly of the tailplanes and the rudder and the rear machine gunner's canopy. This area can be a little bit tricky, and so you really want to take your time here to ensure that you're able to get a good fit all the way around the tail section. In Step 5, we're starting to assemble the main landing gear. These parts actually go together pretty well, and they're very strong once this assembly is completed. In Step 6, we are building the engine nacelles, and then we're installing them around the landing gear. I was able to get a very good fit on the engine nacelles on the A-20 kit that I built. In Step 7, we're assembling the engines and installing those in the engine cowls. Although the engines are very simple, they do look good once they're detail painted and installed on the aircraft. In Step 8, we're installing the engines to the nacelles of the aircraft and adding the upper air intake on each engine. Again, on the A-20 kit, I was able to get a good fit on these parts. In Step 9, we're mounting the landing gear covers if we choose to build the kit with the gear up. In step 10, we're building the nose gear of the aircraft and we're installing part 17. I highly recommend leaving part 17 off of the kit until later on in construction. We will revisit this part in a later step. The nose gear itself also goes together very well. In step 11, we're mounting the main wheels and the nose wheel to the aircraft. The main wheels on some P-70s had a wheel cover on them, and they also had a very blocky tread pattern to the tires. Those are representative of the wheels that come in this kit, and when I built the A20, I spent a lot of time sanding down the diamond tread pattern on this to make it look more realistic. This is a picture of one of the marking options included in the kit. You can see in this photo that this particular P-70 did not have the wheel covers on it, so if you want to model this aircraft, you may have to purchase some aftermarket wheels. In step 12, we're mounting the landing gear covers. This picture shows the main landing gear covers once they're installed. In step 13, we're mounting some of the smaller transparencies to the kit. We're also adding the gun tray. This is what's shown in the AMT directions. I like the Italeri directions a little bit better. It shows more clearly the position of the gun tray, and that's part 83. I would suggest mounting part 83 to part 17 first and installing that assembly under the fuselage. If we look at the underside of the fuselage where these parts go, there are tabs to keep part 17 from going up into the fuselage on the rear of the fuselage. However, at the front of the opening, there are no tabs to keep part 17 from pushing into the fuselage. I would highly suggest putting some similar tabs at the front of this opening, and that way it'll keep part 17 from pushing up in. Part 14 is the final step in construction. Everything here is pretty straightforward. You do want to research the aircraft that you're modeling. The first marking scheme, and that's for Dusty, the P-70 with the panther on the nose. Looking at this picture, we can see just a couple of details. First, the DF loop antenna is not there, and that is part 15. Secondly, the nose guns, and those are parts 84, are much longer on the real aircraft than they are on the kit supplied parts, so you may want to lengthen those. And finally, there's an additional antenna mounted on the side of the fuselage behind the cockpit. You can see that in this photo as well. That brings us to the color and marking guides. There are 2 marking options included in the AMT kit, and there are 4 marking options included in the Italeri kit. I'm not really going to go through each one, but I'm going to highlight the differences in decals between the 2 kits. If we look at the AMT decals, they are very simplistic. There are no stencils in the AMT kit. One thing to note is that the Panther decals on the AMT kit have green palm trees on the bottom of each one. These are not shown on the actual aircraft on either side of the nose. Maybe those were painted on at a later date. I'm not 100% sure, but it is something to note. Another thing to note is there's some stenciling directly below the pilot's cockpit that is not included in the AMT kit, that is included in the Italeri decals. Looking at the Italeri decals, there are 4 marking options in this kit. It's interesting to me that they have the green palm trees on one side of the Panther decal and not the other. The other major difference between the Italeri kit and the AMT kit with regards to decals is the inclusion of stencils for the aircraft. In this picture, we can see that there are wing walk stencils on top of the wings and a few other stencils as well. Italeri includes these decals in the kit, so that's just something to consider. Having built AMT's A20J, I can tell you with confidence that this kit will turn out nicely if you pay attention to the details, if you take care in the areas that I've highlighted. As far as accuracy and detail, this kit compares almost equally to the Tamiya Beaufighter that I've recently reviewed. Additionally, the AMT Italeri P-70 is still the only game in town for this cool aircraft in 1/48 scale. If you don't have either kit on the shelf, I would recommend the Italeri boxing of this kit. It has a little bit clearer instructions, and I like the fact that it includes stencils in the decals and 4 marking options versus the 2 that are included in the AMT kit. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you have built the AMT or Italeri P-70 or one of their A20 series, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, model on.